Welcome to CT Pulse on the HAN Network. I'm Kate Czaplinski with Josh Fisher. It's February 10th, Josh, and it's been a busy week up in Hartford.
That it has, Kate, but we're going to turn away from politics, the start of this week's show at least, to turn our attention to sexting. Ivonne Zucco of the Center for Sexual Assault Crisis Counseling and Education is going to join us to talk about the case at the Newtown High School sexting scandal that came to light late last month.
And then later on, we'll take a look at some of the other big stories around the Nutmeg State this week, from the governor changing course on his reckless spending to a possible change in that pesky car dealership rule. And of course, artist Doug Smith will stop by to show off this week's editorial cartoons appearing in our HAN Network newspapers this week. But first, we want to welcome our first guest, Ivonne. As we said, she is the executive director for the Center for Sexual Assault Crisis Counseling and Education. Ivonne, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me in the show.
Now, Ivonne, you wrote a column that was published in our papers about the Newtown sexting scandal that broke a couple of weeks ago, and it involved more than 20 students sending nude and sexually explicit photographs of classmates, some even allegedly selling these images. And you kind of addressed this and brought some lessons forward that we could learn from it. But first, let's just ask, what was your reasoning for wanting to tackle something like this in a column?
I think although we speak about sexting all the time, people are not truly aware in general, the general public, of the consequences of this, of kids sexting. I also think that for many people out there, because technology is moving so quickly, they really need some kind of guidance on what they can do themselves for their families and the kids in their communities to help out. I think most of us want to do something about this, but many don't know what. And I figure writing a column that gave a few pieces of advice would be useful for people, yes.
Now, Ivonne, you also mentioned, some startling statistics. You write there was a recent study of 7 public high schools in East Texas found that 28% of sophomores and juniors had sent a naked picture of themselves by text or email, and 31% had asked someone else to send one. And I think in your column you make a really interesting point that some of this, as startling as it may be for adults, can kind of be chalked up to some normal sexual exploration. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. When we were getting ready to write this piece, I do really ask my staff and the educators that are out there in the community every day for some feedback and some insight. And they are constantly researching and looking into what's going on in the rest of the country, and they expressed to me that this was normal sexual development for kids. And for me, it was kind of a shock as well, but as we talked about it and looked into different papers that talk about this, we were able to see that, yes, well, this is not too different to what our older generations did in the past. It's just that there is this extra piece of technology that makes it more public and more dangerous for kids nowadays.
Now, Ivonne, so obviously all this new technology that's out there is different than how most parents grew up, particularly those who have teenagers now. So what sort of advice, it can be very overwhelming for a parent because, as you mentioned in your column, and a lot of us know, it's tough to keep up with all the new apps and different things that are out there and ways for kids to communicate. So what advice do you have to give to parents who just feel overwhelmed and aren't sure how to check in with their teenagers?
Really, the best piece of advice is around communication with your kids. Having these conversations every day or, many times throughout the month is important. And having repetitive conversations, kids, they take a while to sink in for them. But if we use some natural moments, like when we are in the car and we are able to address, teenagers are not very easy to speak to sometimes, but sometimes you can, for something they tell you that happened in school, start a conversation and talk about the consequences. One of the things I mentioned in the paper is the emotional consequences of these acts. And I think that would really touch kids' hearts, because although we know that the teenage years can be challenging, we know that, and we can remember as our own teenage years went by, we have that spirit of making this a better world. And I think you can get more to kids if you are really able to talk about, how these interactions can affect other people more than all the consequences, all the other legal consequences that are out there. It is impossible to control what your kid is doing in the phone. You can be checking their phone, but there is so many apps, and so many of them are so easy to hide or disappear instantly, pictures and so on, that really what parents have today, the only real tool is that communication with their kids. Not easy, but it can be done.
Now, Ivonne, do you think it's worth maybe sharing with kids some of these stories of how things have turned terribly wrong, and how for many kids that this happens to or that they're involved in, it really can become, a violation of sorts and lead to some serious bullying? Is it worth kind of sharing those stories to make them understand?
Yes, and having a conversation about it. So if we read the papers and something comes up, just on the weekend I was reading something in the New York Times around this app called Kik. And my daughter used to use Kik a long time ago. She doesn't use it anymore. But when I see pieces like that, it's the perfect time for me to say, oh, remember this app called Kik that you used to use all the time, but you didn't use anymore because people you didn't know were reaching out to you? And then you can go ahead and have that conversation. So every time there is an opportunity in the media or things that kids are listening to, it's important to spark the conversation and make it real for them.
And now, Ivonne, should this be something that should surprise parents, that kids are using technology to explore their sexuality?
It's not surprising. If you read the article, it's more surprising how often adults use this kind of technology to sex.
Right.
One of the things is mentioned there that in a study, about 80% of the people that answered the study said that they had used this kind of technology to do the same thing themselves. So it's not, if you compare it to the rate that the kids are using it, it's just it's not that big in comparison to the adults. It's just that the consequences for kids is bigger, because if you are sending pictures of other kids, then it becomes child pornography.
Right.
And these are things that are happening early in their lives, so it can be very traumatic for them as well.
Right.
Adults do understand privacy in a different way. So for kids, it's really more like a game or something funny. They don't really realize the impact of sharing these kind of pictures,
so
as adults will do.
Sorry. So if one child forwards a photo of one teenager, forwards a photo of another teenager who's naked, that teenager could be charged with as a sex. It's a sex crime, right? And that could get you on the sex offender registry. Yes, it could be distribution of child pornography.
Right.
Wow.
So
now this is very difficult for law enforcement. I mean, they really do a good job at trying to go on a case-by-case basis and see what was the intent behind sending these pictures. But in the case of the sexting case for that we were mentioning in the column, they really were selling the pictures, so there was no way around. I mean, other kids were brought into a board and they just talked about, what they could do, like community service and so on, but the kids that were selling the pictures, there was no way the law enforcement could work around that.
Now, Ivonne, we just want to talk a little bit as well about the center and some of the services that you all offer. Can you talk a little bit about the mission?
Sure, absolutely. Our mission is to serve victims of sexual assault in our communities. So it's counseling and support services. And then we want to prevent abuse by having these prevention programs in the community. So half of our business is really to help those people that have suffered this kind of crime to recover from the emotional consequences of it, and help them navigate the system as well, whether it's the court, the police, go with them to the hospital. We have counselors in a staff and a hotline to support them in that way. But then the other important part of the mission really revolves around prevention. And we have community educators that go into the schools in our areas, the areas we serve, to do presentations for kids. From K through 12, we have age-appropriate kind of presentations. And the presentations really have been updated a lot in the last 3 years. This summer was our big update because prevention is changing from understanding it's everybody's job and not the victim's job to protect themselves. So all ideas there, we had about prevention had to do with don't walk alone in the streets, take a self-defense course, go with somebody if you home if you're drinking and so on. But from understanding this issue, we know most of the time people are abused by someone they know. So this prevention is not effective and also is putting a lot of emotional charge on the victim themselves. It's their responsibility. We have moved to a way of prevention in which now it's everybody's responsibility. So for us, teaching kids, understanding empathy, permission, understanding bystander intervention, and so on are important topics to cover so that real prevention happens.
And if people want more information on the center, where can they go?
So they can visit our website. The address is www.thecenter-ct.org. Or they can call us in the office. The number is 203-348-9346. Or 24 hours in our hotline, 203-329-2929.
Well, Ivonne, the work you guys do is so important, and we so appreciate you talking with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for the call. And, if you don't live in the area that we're serving, we can still direct you to the centers that serve the rest of Connecticut or the rest of the country, actually. So even if you get listeners that are not living in Connecticut, they can still reach out to us, and we will provide them with the resources they may need.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ivonne. Ivonne Zucco, Executive Director for the Center for Sexual Assault, Crisis Counseling and Education. Thank her again. We are going to step out for a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the state news that's interesting us this week. There's actually a lot going on, Josh, so I'm excited to get down to it. All right, well, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with CT Pulse after this.
Had a sports injury that needs immediate care? Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care gives you direct access to an orthopedic specialist quickly. Their highly trained orthopedic professionals expertly treat you without an appointment. Skiing, snowboard, or sports accident, sprain or fracture, Coastal Ortho Express can help. Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care open Monday through Saturday in the iPark building at 761 Main Avenue in Norwalk. Call 203-845-2070 or coastalorthoexpress.com. Find them on Facebook at Coastal Ortho CT.
Darien Sport Shop is a unique store because it's a family store. A busy mom can come in with kids in tow and find everything she needs for them, and even find a dress for herself for Saturday night. And if she's in a rush, she can simply go home and order it from us that night. We'll deliver it the next day. The Darien Sport Shop. We're pretty on the outside and amazing on the inside. Conveniently located with free and easy parking at 1127 Post Road, Darien, Connecticut. Or shop us online at dariensport.com.
It's the new year. The to-do list is long and it's easy to feel pulled in many directions at once. Your professional personal shoppers at Walter Stewart's are ready to check groceries off your list by shopping for you. Save extra time this year and spend it doing more important things. Great food and wine delivered to your home with the same-day service. Shop Stewart's online at stewartsmarket.com.
Well, there's still a bite out on the water. Most anglers have decided to stow the gear for the winter. Just because Mother Nature isn't cooperating doesn't mean you can't see the latest models of all your favorite gear. With two convenient locations, it couldn't be easier to get your fix of summer. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the New England coast, this is a unique place to shop. The Dock Shop, 51 Tokenique Road, Darien, 609 Riverside Avenue, Westport, or on the web, dockshop.com.
Hi, I'm Rob Adams with my good friend Donald Eng, and we're the home team for Nutmeg Sports, Monday through Wednesday at 2 o'clock right here on the HAN Network. We are the place for all things Connecticut sports, so come hang out with us on Nutmeg Sports. Don? They don't call him the best color man in the game for nothing. Nutmeg Sports, 2 o'clock, Monday through Wednesday right here on the HAN Network.
And we're back on this February 10th edition of CT Pulse on the HAN Network. I'm Kate Czaplinski with Josh Fisher.
Kate?
Josh, we're going to get into some of the stories that we're following this week, one of which is State Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff reintroducing a bill with Tesla Motors in mind that would allow electric vehicle makers to open up 3 retail locations in Connecticut. Currently, Connecticut law requires that any new vehicle to be sold to a customer by a dealer franchise that is not owned by the manufacturer Or wait, I read that wrong, Josh.
Yeah, so the whole thing, the dealer can't own the, or the manufacturer can't own the dealership because the government wants to make sure that you have to pay more for the car.
Exactly.
That's the basic rule.
So this was shot down the first time around. I know that Senator Duff introduced it. A lot of people, I mean, the lobby, the car dealership lobbyists, and I mean, we do understand that a lot of them are very involved in the community, and it's a scary prospect for them. It's a changing business, but I mean, it's also about giving consumers more options.
It's kind of like the no Sunday sales of liquor thing. All the liquor stores were against it because Connecticut had laws that limit how many liquor stores you could own that would prevent a monopoly on that.
Right.
So it was that who always ends up coming out losing on this? It's the consumer. It's the consumer,
Right.
and the small businesses were saying, well, it's unfair to us to let the grocery stores sell liquor on Sunday because they're already open and they don't have to pay more.
Right.
So, but we have some video of Bob.
Yeah, this is from Connecticut Democrats
Senator
posted
Duff.
this yesterday from
Embracing electric vehicles continues the work we've done in Connecticut to bring new and emerging technologies in our state. I have introduced Senate Bill 3, which allows the state of Connecticut to bring in 3 electric car companies and for them to be able to sell directly to consumers. And that changes the model which we have worked for many years and decades in this state. So I'm very excited to be able to introduce this legislation to give consumers choice, to continue what we're doing with regard to clean energy and continue what we're doing as far as growing jobs in the state as well. We know that people do have choices, and if they don't have a choice here in Connecticut, they'll make that choice in another state, which is what's been happening right now. I have a lot of constituents in Norwalk and Darien who are looking at electric vehicles, and if they cannot purchase those cars in Connecticut, they will then make that purchase in New York State or some other place.
Because of the unique technology that goes into a car and because of their made-to-order design, our business model does depend on the ability to sell cars directly to our customers. These customers can in turn take solace in Tesla's direct accountability for every sale. What's important to emphasize here is Tesla is looking to invest in Connecticut. We are prepared to open up stores. We're prepared to expand our service presence that already exists in Milford. And with each store, with each location, in the first year alone, that's an investment of $7 to $10 million per location, with anywhere from a dozen to 2 dozen jobs for Connecticut residents, and high 21st century jobs for those Connecticut residents.
We have a bill out there that will give consumers an option here, a very important option. Tesla is a remarkable vehicle, and we have had an outcry during the public hearings that people want to see this car in the state of Connecticut, and therefore we are looking for that, to have those consumers have the option to buy that type of vehicle in the state of Connecticut rather than traveling through the borders of Mass or New York or wherever it may be to purchase a vehicle of that nature. We want businesses to come to the state of Connecticut. This is a great business. We'll be very careful how we go about, aligning this type of business, because obviously we have other car dealers out there that might feel as though we're infringing on their territory. But again, the way this bill will be crafted, we'll work together with those car manufacturers and make sure that every consumer has the option of purchasing a vehicle that they want, and they don't have to go to New York or another state to do that.
Again, that video was posted by Connecticut Democrats. Interesting debate. We'll see how it goes. I know, according to CT News junkie Bob Duff said he obviously feels competition is a good thing. He understands that car dealers are going to feel threatened. We'll just have to see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be nice if it went further. It wasn't just for Tesla. It wasn't, that we could really open it up for all of these, because it's what cars are one of the only products where the consumer, they're not allowed to buy them directly by from the manufacturer, and also the retailer is limited too. You can only, you can have maybe 2 different, you could sell a couple different brands of cars at one dealership, but how cool would it be if there was a Costco type place to go to just to buy cars, and you could just pick out what you wanted and cut out that that middleman. Of course, there's a lot of consumer products where, someone makes, rubber balls that they sell, and they sell them to the toy store. The toy store sells them to you.
Right.
You could do that with cars.
And
but
there's a lot of great car dealerships in the area, and if that's the way you choose to purchase a car, great. But you should have options. I mean, like we said, the more options for consumers, the better.
It's like cable. It's like cable. They limit the competition, and it almost makes you want to vote for Bernie Sanders, Kate.
Almost.
Almost. Almost.
All right, well, an interesting story from the New York Times. Law students working with Yale's Legal Services Organization plan to file a class action lawsuit in federal district court on Monday against Governor Daniel P. Malloy and the state's acting and former health commissioners on behalf of residents affected by Connecticut's Ebola quarantine policies, including 2 who were Yale graduate students. The complaint seeks unspecified damages for some of the plaintiffs who were ordered to stay inside apartments and homes for up to 3 weeks in the fall of 2014, with police officers posted outside their residences. And obviously this is coming up again, these Yale students mentioned, because the Zika virus is becoming a concern. Obviously people are worried it's going to move up here, and they don't want to see these kind of quarantine practices that they say violate people's civil rights. Yeah,
well, and it's an interesting thing too is in the lawsuit they claim that Governor Malloy acted out of fear and political ambition rather than science and law when they, quote, trampled plaintiff civil liberties and stigmatized West African communities in the process. We saw Christie do that down in New Jersey also.
And I have to say, that fear that took over when Ebola was coming into the country, right? A lot of people were like, yes, quarantine, why not? It's safer. But that's also the argument, civil liberties and having police officers posted outside your apartment. I mean, I remember there was that Today Show doctor correspondent who had gone out to get soup, and it really ruined her career because she was supposed to be under quarantine for having traveled to an area with Ebola, and she violated it, and it became a big outcry over that.
We could say there's a big thing going on now, but it's probably something that's been going on throughout our history. It's like, America's civil liberties are important unless there's a political advantage for them not being important, or unless we can scare people.
Yes, exactly.
But that's kind of a time when you think that's when these laws are most important, is during a time of crisis. If every time there's a crisis we decide to throw out the Constitution, what's the point of having it during the good times also?
Agreed. And then there's an interesting story you're following, Josh.
Yeah, which one are we doing here first, Kate? Hold on a second. Oh, this is kind of neat, I think. This is something. So we're all seen for years the handicapped symbol of a person sitting on a wheelchair. So there's this movement, and the governor has gotten behind it to change that. It's called Change the Sign, Change the Attitude, and Governor Malloy has proposed a bill. I think we have a couple different images to a more swifter, active-looking which is the proposed design all the way on the right. We even see, if you see that transparent one up in Boston, there are people sticking these over the current signs right there to show you what the new ones would look like. And this bill would say that starting in January 2017, they would use the logo with the dynamic character leaning forward with a sense of movement, with the idea of changing the thoughts behind, the old symbol, it does look like an FDR wheelchair.
It is very old school. I mean, we're used to seeing it now, but I kind of
like it looks like it should be pushed instead of that you are still in control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do. I like that idea.
I do too. I don't always agree with the governor, but I think this is a good thing, and it's not you might get some people who say this is political correctness, but I don't think it would fall under that. I think it looks cool. It looks like the little Olympic symbols they do for each sport.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that'll be kind of neat to watch.
Yeah. And something else, Josh, when we were live last week, the governor was making his
he was making his budget address, which we got to catch some of, and it's kind of funny, and because Keith Fano of the Connecticut Mirror, who's one of the top political reporters in the state, had a nice little overview article about how this dramatically shifts Connecticut in the new budget, because Malloy was running, he ran for re-election almost 2 years ago now, talking about how it would have been wrong to make all these cuts to the budget, that Connecticut would have really suffered, and now in a non-election year he's proposing all these cuts. It's like he's finally recognized that, oh wait, things aren't going well in Connecticut. We continue to have a large deficit. We talked about that with Tony Wong last week. We talked about that with Representative Shaben the week before that. So and now, but he's going to get a lot of pushback from the Democrats too, who want to, everyone, all these law. You got to think you got over 100 lawmakers in there, and all of them they want to protect. They all have something that they want to protect. So there's a lot to fight with. So a lot of the Republicans are saying that, it's nice that Malloy finally noticed, we have these problems, and it would, you got to think. We've watched really the rest of the country kind of come out of this economic recession, and we still feel like we're kind of in it here in Connecticut. Yeah. And maybe if the governor had been a little more forward-thinking and bit the bullet and followed through with his campaign promises of over 4 years ago, we wouldn't be making these cuts right now. But of course, then also he's blaming the Rell administration and the Rowland administration who preceded him. Of course. But he's been governor now for almost 6 years, so you see, over 5 years. He's into his 6th year. So, and the state is facing a $1.8 billion deficit. He inherited a $3.7 billion deficit in his first term. So it'll be interesting what happens as this budget process goes along.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll have more guests coming up to talk about that for sure.
Another thing that's interesting too is you got to forgive me. I'm a little slow today, Kate, because I have some New Hampshire primary hangover settling in, and it's
who doesn't? Were you live tweeting the whole thing?
I did some. Of course. I mean, I was more excited for the primary than I was for the Super Bowl, and. It was exciting, I thought, and John Kasich, who
Tony Wong's man, telling us about his support for Kasich.
I'm a John Kasich fan as well. He, quote unquote, did well. He got about 18% of the vote, but that counts as doing well because Trump did so well, and Hillary not doing well,
not doing well with women voters, not just young women voters, all women voters, which is very interesting. They're calling it now the Hillary's woman problem, problem.
Now she was, according to the exit polls, 50-50 on women with Democrats, but it was the independents who allowed to vote in either primary in New Hampshire who really pushed for burning, but that tells you how things could look for a general election. Of course, I think New Hampshire does not exactly embody the entire country, but what is
our New Hampshire resident over there laughs, our former New Hampshire resident.
But this is not good for Governor Malloy too, because as Jim Cameron mentioned this in last week's Talking Transportation on Coffee Break. And something that everyone's been kind of talking about in Connecticut, that Malloy really has his hopes and sights on a cabinet position in the Hillary Clinton administration, which I think would be great because it'd be a lot of fun to have Nancy Wyman be giving the speaches in town to listen to that lovely voice of hers.
I do. I really.
It's great.
She's
I could
a cool
go to sleep
lady.
to that at night.
She's a cool lady.
So I think this could not be good. We could be stuck with Governor Malloy even longer if Hillary doesn't get her act together. And all these Connecticut politicians too went up to New Hampshire. Representative Himes was up there. Senator Murphy was up there, trying to help Hillary. Hillary had more people from out of state up there, which is typical of these in New Hampshire than she did in state. And you got to think Bernie had a lot of them too, being from neighboring Vermont.
Right.
So things, it'll be fun. Now we got to wait 10 more days till the next vote. So that's kind of tough. That's kind of tough.
All right. Well, you get a nice little break. All right. And speaking of breaks, we're going to take one. When we come back, Doug Smith is going to join us to show us this week's editorial cartoons. There's some good ones this week, so keep watching. We'll be back with CT Pulse after this.
I really wanted something that felt like a home. Coming from a big house, I wanted the feel of a home as opposed to a condo. The construction is incredible, whether it's the floors, the fireplace, the moldings, the lighting. It's as peaceful as my home was in the middle of the woods. It feels like a house. It does not feel like a condo or a townhome. I feel like I'm in my house.
Find over 1,000 special stories at Hospital for Special Surgery. Go to hss.edu/backinthegame.
I was jogging 5 months after my cartilage tear.
Skiing a year after hip surgery.
And playing grandma 4 weeks after hip replacement.
One special hospital, 1,000 special stories. See Connecticut patients at hss.edu/CT.
For more than 50 years, Triple S has been Fairfield County's expert service for carpet, upholstery, and drapery cleaning. We provide the best in repairs and in-depth restoration, understanding fabrics and how to properly clean and restore them. Our staff will come to your home to clean your wall-to-wall carpet to perfection. We can also pick up your fine carpets and bring them to our facilities. With locations in Norwalk, Stamford, and Stratford, Triple S will get the job done fast, big or small. At Triple S, you can count on our people as well as our cleaning.
Find us at triplesclean.com or 203-847-8000. I'm Kate Czaplinski. Join us for Coffee Break weekdays at 11 to get the latest Connecticut news, weather, high school sports, and more. News doesn't get any more local than on Coffee Break on the HAN network.
You are watching the HAN network, and you're not alone. Nearly 500,000 viewers enjoyed our broadcasts in the first 5 months. Advertise on the network that reaches Fairfield County, Connecticut's most engaged audience. Contact Jessica Murrin, Advertising Director, at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network.
And we're back on CT Pulse on the HAN network. As you can see, it's time for drawing conclusions with our editorial cartoonist, Doug Smith. Doug, you're walking like an Egyptian this week. Nice. I like it. I like it. Maybe not the most flattering drawing of yourself, but I like that you have fun with it. All right, Doug, so you're going to show us some of this week's cartoons. Let's get right into it. Eric, what do we have this week? Oh, little Valentine's Day.
There's good old Dan.
A Valentine's Day gift from Governor Dan Cupid.
Yep.
Oh, town aid road funding, right? Which is coming to Milford.
It's nice though that he doesn't have a bow and arrow too. So it's a very, very, very Malloy-esque.
The nice thing about that cartoon was I could just change on the shirt sleeve there the name of each town and use it for different papers.
Perfect. Exactly.
Although I guess the thing like. Him handing that money back as a Valentine is kind of like me raiding my wife's pocketbook and buying her flowers with it.
Nice. I like that analogy. All right, what's next up this week, Doug? Tell us about this one.
Oh, that's Lewisboro, and they were just, according to securitysystems.com, they were voted #1 safest town in a 10-town area.
Interesting.
So
well, good for them.
I use that in conjunction with Valentine's Day.
I like it.
Like a force field around that guy there, so
nice.
he's not...
Can't shoot arrows in there, it's too safe.
No, Lewisboro's our one New York property, and it's right on the Ridgefield and New Canaan border. Those are the two Connecticut towns at border. So is that shot coming over from Connecticut into New York? Or is it from Bedford?
Probably Bedford, Scotch Corners, Vista, who knows?
There you go. And this is an important one. A little reminder that February is Heart Health Month, and we know, obviously, that shoveling a lot of snow can be a little dangerous.
This was me this weekend, basically.
It's a little cartoon public service announcement.
Exactly. Snow was a little heavier this weekend, too, right?
Yeah,
than the last one.
It was. That was a lot of us this weekend. And I love this one. It's just silly.
Just,
a Darien
a bizarre one.
Won the Maritime Aquarium Lighthouse Contest. The judge looks like, he was a little pushed one way.
Probably named Hilton Head or something.
Very cool. And I believe those are the ones for this week, and you have some ones that you've received letters about.
Yes, thought I'd share those with us.
Yes, please. One that's very perfect for our show. Every year, fewer and fewer people come to my party, GOP candidate, and the elephant saying, "I still like you."
And I think that was New Canaan. I'm not sure.
That was Darien, actually, because you did that when I was editor of the Darien Times.
That's right.
We worked together. I went with an editorial that I wrote, probably knocking the Republicans for nominating Linda McMahon, which is just a wild guess.
Right, because you sent me a little...
There were a lot of those. Josh wrote a lot of those. But what was the response to that?
So somebody wrote in a letter just saying, I'm a political independent. I found the political cartoon in this week's edition distasteful. The paper should be neutral. And then in caps says, do not publish my comments. This is just for you to read.
Yes.
So, okay, but then I think you sent me a little joke underneath they're saying, thanks for your comments. I published it under a 72-point banner that says opinion.
Yes, that's true. I always love that. Yes, that was, you're supposed to be neutral, even on the
Not
opinion
on the
page.
opinion page,
Be as
right.
worried as possible, please, please. Could
And
read
all
this
it
when I
was
go to
simply
sleep
doing
at
was
night.
just saying the fact that the Republican Party was shrinking.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
So-
Which is
Exactly.
true and based on statistics.
But
I do find it interesting
knows?
that people think the things people get offended about.
Well, it's
but-
all these things. Everyone reads it you read it from your own perspective
Right.
too.
You
and
really
a
got
lot-
to take into account people get upset over cartoons in general. I mean, if that's the sort of thing that gets you upset, I mean, unless it's slander.
Yeah, it's a long road to haul there
I
for
know.
you.
All right, what's up next? Little Stefanoni, the early years.
this
Tell
is
us about
Chris
this.
Stefanoni, a gentleman from Darien,
Yes.
has been trying
I
to
remember
develop
this one.
affordable housing, and he's had tons of opposition in town. Whether you're for it or against it, he's taken a lot of flack, and
Right.
he became a big fan of the cartoons that ran about
I
this.
love that.
And,
People love this cartoon.
he turned it, I sent him in one of the cartoons. He sent me a very gracious letter back thanking me for it, and turned out to be a very class act and a nice guy.
That's really cool.
So
I
somebody else,
I
however,
got stopped on the street.
but somebody else spoke in his behalf,
Oh.
unknowns to him, I guess. Chris Stefanoni as a child. No matter which side of the issue you are on, the cartoon in Thursday's Darien Times struck a new low, and by association brings the town down with it. A great example for our children. I'm ashamed, and you should be too.
Is that what you did as soon as you read it?
So it's
that's great.
The good thing is you have pretty thick skin, Doug,
Right.
so that's always a good thing. And now the next one, I could see some people getting upset
yes.
about.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about
That's
this
another
one.
Darien. You're pulling out all these ones
Ooh,
than when I was
trying
editor.
to keep the towns out of it.
Oh, well.
So anyway, to the editor, try to never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by ignorance. So I am assuming the cartoon sprang from ignorance.
Oh.
Actually, it sprang from the fact that people in town were complaining about
Right.
the number of administrators they had to pay.
It was your comment on other people's
Exactly.
feelings in Darien, because that's what you do as a
And-
cartoonist. You're covering what's in the
And
news.
actually, by coincidence, the letter was written by one of the administrators. So
There you go.
Was it an administrator or a school board member?
School
I think.
board
Yeah.
member.
I remember that one too. This
Yep.
was fun. We're bringing back all,
Oh,
our,
yeah.
all our greatest hits.
These are
Doug.
good memories. Okay, I love this next one. At a secret meeting of the Deer Commission, let our call go forth and eradicate every deer from the town of Darien. And then the poor little deer on the wall saying,
know.
"Call or cult." Tell us about this one. I know this. I covered a Deer Commission in Ridgefield, and I know it's always controversial for certain animal lovers. So tell us a little bit about this.
Well, it was just a valid complaint. We found the deer cult cartoon issue in the November issue of your paper to be in very poor taste and quite surprising given your past endorsement of the Deer Committee's work. Not only is it totally offensive, it is ill-founded and hurtful as well. And then the funny part was it went on for another 3 pages talking about
Yeah.
But
the
see,
deer.
it was an opinion piece
I
on.
know.
Yes, I know.
You know,
No,
but-
I
See,
just
and,
find
that,
it so
and a
fascinating.
little background on that one was it was certainly when I was editor of the Darien Times, we backed the idea of killing the deer and getting culling that, which I thought made some sense. But the Deer Committee would not follow the open meeting laws of the state of Connecticut,
Right.
and so they were very. And the guy who ran it, he was this very nice older man. He'd come in and he'd be like, "But we're doing the right thing, so we should be allowed to not
meet in
follow the
private.
law
No.
because
Yes.
because if we do it in
So
public,
that's why
people
that
will
makes
show
sense.
up, and then they'll be against us."
Right.
Which
Right.
kind of goes
They
against
didn't want
that
the
whole
criticism. They didn't want people coming and criticizing
the
them.
secret
which
cable of
is not how it goes. So there's secret Deer Commission meetings. All right, this next one is adorable. I don't know how anyone could be upset about this one that's coming up next. Who's that
Oh.
tiny figure standing next to the little library? That's the little librarian.
And the little library is the little library is a thing that several towns are doing where
Yes,
you can
like a mailbox
take or
of
leave a book.
books. Yes.
And it's an honor system. It's a nice thing. Somebody, librarian wrote in, said it is with mixed feelings that I noted Doug Smith's editorial cartoon concerning the Little Libraries project spearheaded by the Friends of the Library. While I applaud the publicity for this wonderful project, I cannot applaud the promotion of the stereotypical bun-wearing, shushing librarian.
Fair enough.
I wonder
All
when
right.
Mr. Smith last visited his public library.
Okay.
When in actuality, I visited a library a week before where my sister is a librarian.
There you go.
And
Okay,
the little
best
librarian
argument.
was modeled after her.
Oh, best
So-
argument. But I kind of like that. Someone's
I know.
defending, trying to,
I know.
get rid of the stereotype.
Well,
but
it's like, of course, it's not the stereotype anymore, the bun-wearing spinster with the corrective
No.
shoes, but neither are librarians 6 inches tall.
Yes,
So-
I know. Very cool. I
Not in
love
this
that,
world.
though.
But-
That's an interesting
So anyway,
one.
the Wilton Library loved the cartoon and hung it up down there.
Oh,
So-
that's cool. All right, Doug, thank you so much as always. A lot
No,
of fun.
thank you.
All right. Well, Josh, that's going to do it
That's
for
it.
this week's CT Pulse. Of course, people can watch us on demand on HAN.network.
Yes, they can.
Yes, they can.
And we got Nutmeg Sports coming up live at 2 o'clock. And then a lot of games coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
Basketball doubleheader, Fairfield Ward against Fairfield Ludlow boys and girls on Thursday. We have McMahon and Wilton boys basketball on Friday. And more championships, the FCI Wrestling Championship on Saturday.
Very cool. All right. Well, that's going to do it, as we said, for CT Pulse. We'll see you next Wednesday at 12:30. Have a great week.